So as Kurt mentioned, I've become marginally famous when I wasn't trying. I started a blog called Stuff White People Like. That's it. It started as a joke with a friend of mine. I'll get into the story in a second. The site launched on January 18th, and as of this morning, it has 25 million hits. And sort of insane growth, I guess you could say. So one day I was working with Kurt, as has been pointed out already. And I was having an IM conversation with my friend Miles, who works for EA in Vancouver. And we were talking about The Wire. Does everybody here watch the TV show The Wire? Absolutely. And so my friend Miles, who's Filipino, said that he does not trust white people who don't watch The Wire. And I said to Miles, don't worry, they all do, everything's fine. And then we just started having this conversation. We started saying, well, what are they doing? I mean, I'm aware of the ridiculous distance, if you can't tell I'm a white guy, of the distance that I put into this. And he said, well, what are they doing instead of watching The Wire? And we just threw back and forth and said, getting divorced, going to therapy, doing yoga, shopping at Whole Foods. And I said, okay, this is funny, this is hilarious, blog time. That's literally what I wrote, blog time. So I went to WordPress.com, like millions of other people, and I just typed in stuffwhitepeoplelike.wordpress.com and started writing. And the only plan that I'd ever had with this was to write something funny for my friend Miles, and possibly for a few of my friends in Toronto, and possibly LA if anyone cared. And so I kept writing. And then my friend Sean, who was in design school in Victoria, BC, needed a final project, and he was doing book layout for his major, design school. And I said, okay, well how about this? I will get to 50 posts as soon as possible. We'll get some pictures together, some high-res photos, and we'll turn this into a tiny book. You know, 50 posts, I don't know, 50 pages, 100 pages, something like that. We'll self-publish it ourselves, sell it on the site, maybe sell a few copies to friends and family, and possibly maybe a Canadian publisher might be interested in picking it up, because in Canada, if you're a Canadian writer, you get grants from the government to, you know, make sure that Canadian culture is alive and well. And I thought this stuff was really funny. I thought it was hilarious, so I sent it on to a few of my friends. And shortly after, they sent it on to a few of their friends, and a few of their friends, and a few of their friends. And the next thing I know, 1,000 hits in one day. I couldn't believe it. I had a previous blog. It was about a video game that I played and never got over 150. And so I got 1,000 hits a day. I can't believe it. And so the person I was working next to, he's right over there, his name's Max, said, you've got to put ads on this site. And I thought, well, all right, why not? I mean, maybe I get a free lunch, a sandwich at Bluebird Cafe or something. So I said, all right. But the thing with WordPress is they will not let you run ads if it's hosted on WordPress. This prevents spam blogging and people just starting blogs with, you know, just the word Jessica Simpson over and over and over again to get people to click there to try and get revenue. So the only way it works is you have to register a domain, and then you have to pay for hosting yourself. So I registered stuffwhitepeoplelike.com, and I also registered stuffwhitepeoplelike.org because I thought it was funny because of moveon.org, and I thought it's hilarious to say it's an organization, a research organization. And I hosted it on a private server. And for some reason, I don't know what it was about timing, or possibly the fact that people didn't have to type in .wordpress.com anymore, it exploded. And it was up for less than a day before it crashed their servers. It was 30,000 hits overnight, just from registering from the WordPress.com to the regular one. And it crashed their servers. And I called the guy and I said, well, what's going on? Why isn't this working? And he said, oh, the traffic's too high. This is insane. What are you running, some sort of business here with a shopping cart? And I said, no, I'm running WordPress. And he couldn't believe it. And then they told me what it was going to cost to host a site with this kind of traffic. And my jaw dropped, because I mean, the Google ads weren't even up yet, and I was like, I'm not going to pay this amount of money and get it up for something that could completely not be popular in another 2 weeks. So I moved the whole thing back to WordPress. But I set up redirects, so that if you typed in stuffwhitepeoplelike.com or stuffwhitepeoplelike.org, it would redirect to the WordPress site. And so as that's happening, the blog was mentioned on Comedy Central's blog, their main blog. And it was also mentioned on the blog for Good Magazine, which is the magazine run by Al Gore's son. And this drove all this traffic to the site from all the people who read those two things. And then it just kept growing from there. And so more and more people were discovering the site based on these two media links, and then they started sending it to their friends, and starting to send it to their friends. And one of the things that I started to notice in terms of growth that's really, really important was stumble upon. Has everybody here heard of Stumble, I would imagine this kind. I noticed that they were sending more traffic to my site than anywhere else. So I would do an interview for the LA Times, for example, or the Baltimore Sun. And they would always say at the end, they go, I bet you this will lead to a big bump in traffic. And compared to what StumbleUpon was sending, it was barely a blip. Every single day, StumbleUpon was just sharing the site with more and more people, and it kept growing and growing and growing. And then an interesting thing happened. So post number 34 on the site is public radio, because white people love public radio, and sort of making fun of This American Life and NPR and things like that.
No.
And then I got a call from Talk of the Nation to be on NPR, which was a little strange. I mean, here I am making fun of NPR on the site repeatedly, and they said, well, why don't you come on the show? So fortunately, one of NPR's offices is in Culver City, literally around the corner from Schematic. So I biked over on my lunch break to do an interview on Talk of the Nation. And after doing the NPR interview, things got really, really big. Because it was obviously the radio show, and don't ever underestimate the reach of NPR because traffic just spiked. And it was on the website. And they had two articles. One was debating whether or not the site was racist, and the other one was just talking about all the stuff that's in there. I can answer questions if you have. I'm not a racist. I get asked that a lot. Or rather accused of that a lot, I think is a better way to put it. And then from there, it went nuts. And the next thing I know, it's in New York Magazine, LA Times, Houston Chronicle, all the media back home in Canada, National Post, Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, and my old college newspaper that I used to work on called me for an interview, which oddly enough sort of felt like the most impressive of them all. So as all of this is growing, this site is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then something really, really interesting happens. Hollywood's agencies come after me. And before I knew it, I had to take a day off work because I was meeting with CAA, ICM, William Morris, and UTA all in one day.
Wow.
And the interesting thing is, in spite of living in Los Angeles, I don't have a car. So I biked to Beverly Hills. And I biked into CAA. And for those of you who know CAA, they have this long, expensive driveway with Bentleys and Hummers and Ferraris in there. And I navigated my little bicycle past all of these expensive cars and right into the lobby and proceeded to get yelled at by the security guard for having tires on their marble floors. And then I got to the desk and I thought I was a courier. And it's sort of interesting. I'm like, no, I'm actually here to see agents. And so I met with all of these agents, which was just amazingly mind-blowing. The site had started less than 45 days ago. And here I am taking a day off work in Beverly Hills, meeting with the biggest agencies in town. The one that I didn't meet with, ICM, would get in touch with me 2 weeks later. So it was sort of nuts that all five reached out to me. I still can't believe that. And in doing all of this,